Hi everyone, I'm Wendy. Welcome back to Show Me Mo Vegan. Recently, I've shared several What I Eat in a Day videos where I demonstrate different methods of following a whole food plant-based diet. And while those are pretty similar to how I eat on a regular basis, since I was specifically trying those different methods, it wasn't exactly the same as what I eat. So I thought it would be interesting to show you a few samples from the last couple of weeks of some things that I've actually been eating. So you'll see my method of cooking and how I meal prep. And as I started putting clips together, I had quite a few, so I'm going to break this up and this will just be part one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, go ahead and do that so you don't miss part two. So I don't usually meal plan, I simply look at what I have on hand and throw some simple meals together. I think simplicity is key. I buy some of the same staples every week and then add on whatever produce looks best at the store that day. Then I mix and match to come up with different meals. I'm also part of a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. As part of a CSA, you pay a local farmer upfront and get fresh produce on a regular basis throughout the season. So you can kind of guess what you'll get based on the time of year, but you never know exactly what you'll get. I have a whole playlist from my CSA last year if you want to see how I cook with my local produce, but I'll show you some of that today as well. First, I'm starting with these chickpea bites. This is based off a recipe I used to eat before I was vegan that had zucchini, carrots, eggs, and cheese. So I was trying to recreate that without the eggs and cheese. I'm starting by chopping up an onion, and then I got these garlic scapes from my CSA. These get harvested from the top of the garlic plant before the actual bulb of garlic forms. The scapes have a nice garlicky flavor, but a texture more like a vegetable, such as green beans. So you can use these either as a vegetable or as a garlic flavoring. If I didn't have these, I would have just used regular garlic. And I also got a zucchini in my CSA, so I'm shredding that up. For best results, it would probably be good to squeeze out some of the water, but I'm being lazy, so I just used it as is. And next up, I'm also shredding a couple of carrots. Then I'll mix up the batter. I'm using chickpea flour or garbanzo bean flour to make the quiche-like little muffins. I've made something similar before using tofu, but I wanted to try this because I know a lot of people use chickpea flour to make vegan omelets, so I thought it might work out well in this recipe. I only had about 3/4 of a cup left though, so I also added a little bit of whole wheat flour. Then I'm adding a little baking powder. I like this one that's aluminum free. Plus a little salt substitute for some flavor. Next, I'm adding nutritional yeast for that cheesy flavor, and then I'll mix everything before adding the wet ingredients. And for that, I'm just using a little bit of soy milk. So this is what the batter looks like. I'm not much of a baker, but I would say it's similar to a cornbread batter consistency. And now I'm adding in all of my veggies. I was thinking I might have too many veggies and not enough batter, but it ended up working out okay. I'm dividing it into a silicone muffin pan, and then I baked it in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 35 minutes. After that, I let it cool in the silicone pan. It's much easier to get things out of a silicone pan if you let it cool first. And then I added a little bit of fresh basil on top, also from my CSA. I ate it with this potato salad that my mom made. If you all want the recipe for that, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can get it from my mom. Here's what these look like on the inside. A lot of people complain about the chickpea flavor in these egg-type dishes, and I think I would have to agree. I would have probably enjoyed this better using my tofu batter, but it was still really tasty. And here's another day where I had some of the leftovers just with some hash brown potatoes and toast. So yummy. Next is probably one of my favorite throw-together meals that I've come up with recently. It was a tofu and veggie stir-fry. I started by throwing some sliced onions in a dry skillet. I don't use oil, I just let it saute and then add a little bit of water if anything starts to stick. Next, I threw in some colored bell peppers as well as the stems from this beautiful Swiss chard that I got in my CSA. After that cooked down, I added the Swiss chard leaves. Look how pretty it is. Veggies really are so much more vibrant and tasty when you get them locally. Once all the veggies were cooked, I pushed them to the side of the pan and added my tofu. I don't remember exactly what I did with the tofu, but I know it was some low-sodium soy sauce, balsamic vinegar, and maybe some garlic and onion powder. And this is what it looked like once everything was mixed together. And while all that was cooking, I cooked up these black rice noodles to go along with it. This ended up being so very delicious. I love how usually the simplest meals are the tastiest. And I always like to throw a few sesame seeds on top of my stir fries. I got a few meals out of this, so I had my meal that day, and then I put aside 2 portions for later. Next, I made just a really basic soup. I showed this in my latest What I Eat in a Day video, so now here's the recipe. It starts with the usual suspects, some onion, carrots, and celery, so I chopped all of that up. I actually really love chopping. It's kind of meditative, I think, but if you don't love chopping, a lot of these vegetables can be found pre-prepped at your local grocery store or in the frozen food section. Once again, I had some of those garlic scapes from my CSA, so I used those, but again, normally I would just use regular garlic. Then the other fun ingredient that I got from my CSA was fennel. So I decided to chop that up and use it in my soup. And finally, we also got some kale. So here I've got a pot and a skillet with those onions I chopped. In the skillet, I'm making my sweet and sour chickpeas, which I already have a video showing how to make, so I'll link to that if you want to see. But this just shows how I do like to batch cook sometimes. It's more efficient to cook multiple dishes at once, so you're not in the kitchen all day every day. So then I'm adding all those soup ingredients to the pot to let them start softening. Then back over to the cutting board, I chopped up all the stuff for my sweet and sour chickpeas, and then I'm also chopping up this green garlic that I got from the CSA. This is basically just a young bulb of garlic that hasn't developed the papery skin yet, and usually you can eat the whole thing. This one had started to get a little bit of a tough skin, so I still peeled off the outside layer. But then I'm just chopping the whole bulb. You can see the little sections where eventually the garlic cloves will form, but right now it's easy to just chop and eat everything. Then I'll divide that among my 2 pots on the stove. That week I also got a thyme plant from my CSA, so I cut a couple sprigs of that to add to my soup. Then I added a can of white beans and some vegetable broth, then a bay leaf and those sprigs of thyme. I covered this and let it simmer until the veggies were nice and soft and the thyme leaves were falling off the stem. Then here's a picture of my other skillet with all the veggies in there. Don't forget to check out that recipe. And when the soup was almost done, I wilted in the kale. Last but not least, I added some lemon juice. This is so delicious in soup or any dish, really. It gives it such a nice flavor. So that was kind of a batch cooking moment because I got multiple meals out of these 2 dishes. But more often than not, I'm just throwing meals together on the fly. Here's an example of that. I was working on developing my vegan rotel dip, and I'll link to that video as well. But with some of the leftover dip, I added it to a pot with some leftover brown rice and some more of those garlic scapes, and that was it. This was so delicious and so simple. We also got a little bit of cilantro from the CSA, so I threw that on top. And for another meal, I used that same filling in a sprouted grain tortilla for this quesadilla type thing. So there you have a sample of how I actually eat and several ideas for plant-based meals. If you got some ideas for your next plant-based meal, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up. Then subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of What I Actually Eat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.